Welcome to this episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. We're back in the building. It's the first week. Teachers are back here. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the inside of Emmaus High School for the first time in several months. We have been coming to you from my basement and through Google Meets, but now we've upgraded. We're doing Zoom calls like the rest of the world. And last year, we were a lot late in the game of getting our ninth grade principal on the Ninth Grade Experience. So this year, we decided he probably should be the first person that you see as a ninth grader incoming. And maybe you saw a little bit, you only saw a brief picture of him during the ninth grade orientation video, but we're joined today on the show by Mr. Fortier, our ninth grade principal. So thanks a lot for taking some time out of the busy, hectic week here before school starts to give us some more up-to-date information and some tips for our ninth grade students.
Absolutely. I'm really actually happy to be on here. Obviously, we have a lot of new things that are coming out. We're learning brand new technology every single day. So the more that we can give you guys, the more information we can give you guys and as up to date as possible. I can't say that I'm going to give you all the information in here because I'm sure there's still unknowns that we're trying to figure out day by day. But I'm really thankful that we have this outlet to be able to get information out to students and parents.
And we'll be able to check back in like later as we get kind of closer to different milestones or markers that we might go through for the ninth graders as well too. So we'll have the opportunity to check in. So the first thing I wanted to ask, and I thought this might be a little bit of a lighthearted question is, so we've gone through all the different things that have been happening all summer. So what's been the biggest question other than like, are we actually coming to school? Like what's been the biggest or most asked question that you have fielded during the summer leading up to what's going on today?
Oh man, I think the biggest one was either like, when are we going to have access to schedules and what are going on with tours? So those are probably the biggest questions that we've had. We obviously did tours. I didn't like the fact that we weren't able to give appropriate schedules for students as they were coming in. Our tours really were kind of like a tour of the building. Like, this is where the cafeteria is. This is where the auditorium is. This is the different hallways, which is important information. However, students weren't able to go, this is where my first period is. This is where my second period is. And that's, we've never experienced that before. I wish we could have done something else. We are trying to look into something, but I'm not sure how feasible it's going to be able to allow additional tours during the remote period. And the biggest reason for that is the fact that students that are in a remote setting are still supposed to log in during those times to be able to actually see their classes and to go to their classes. So I think that's the biggest question that's come up over and over and over for me. Obviously, I'm not activities or athletics, so they've been talking about that on their end. But for me, definitely, when are the schedules going to come out, and what is going on with tours?
So we're talking today, it's Thursday, August 27th. It's going to go up today, August 27th. So I know a lot of information is being shared via the website, via email blast, via all different stuff. So as a condensed version as you could possibly imagine to communicate it to, next week, we start school on Monday, August 31st. For our freshmen, and basically for everybody that's listening to this, what will that week look like for the students? Because we know that we're going to go remote after next week. So that one's kind of a little bit easier, but what should the freshmen be looking for next week?
So next week, you should be looking to meet your teachers to get an idea of what the expectations are. If you're remote, you're obviously going to log in, and you should log in to your classes every single day during the period. So first period is going to look a little longer. It's going to be 60 minutes or so. So that's going to have a lot of information via some videos that you're going to see Dr. Kieris's face. You'll see my face. You'll see the other assistant principals' faces as we talk about different expectations that are going to happen throughout the year, especially in this remote environment. Another thing that you're going to hopefully see is basically where your classes are going to be when you come back into the building. And our hope still is that it's October 26th, around that time, that we're going to be able to have the staffing needs that we need to be able to run our building in a hybrid setting. It's going to look like there's very little students in our building. We have 25% coming in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. If you want to look for those breakdowns, please look on our website. There's been a lot of really great information that's been put out there on what the schedule looks like, who should be in the building. I believe the first day is going to be any students with the last name from A through E, but please look on our website and please look to see when you're supposed to be in the building. If you're not supposed to be in the building that day, you should be logging on. You should be logging into Schoology. When you get into Schoology, you'll be able to see your courses, first period, second period, third period, fourth period, and you should be meeting with your teachers. When you come into the building, whether that's Monday or Wednesday or whatever it is, you should be coming in and getting materials that you are going to use for the next couple months, and use that from your, get information from your teacher. The next thing that I would say is, like, if you're a student that is a PMLCTI, so our ninth graders, you would be going to our Lehigh County Technical Institute. That first week, you won't be doing that. So you'll be coming in and you'll have a place to go during that time frame where you're supposed to go there. We'll be having you housed, I believe, in what's called our black box. So when you come in, obviously there's going to be a bunch of adults in the hallways. So those of you that are a little bit more anxious of where do I go? I really didn't get a tour. There's going to be adults in the hallways. Ask an adult. I'm looking to get to this place. You'll have plenty of time. There'll be 10 minutes going from first period to second period to third period to fourth period. We've tried to do that so that you have as much time as possible to get there. And you'll be done at 11 o'clock. So at 11 o'clock, you'll be able to get on the bus or get the transportation that you've worked through, get on the bus, and then be able to go home. Our building is open at 6:45. We are asking that students not congregate anywhere. Like normally, ninth graders, you would come in from a bus if you're taking a bus. You come in if you're getting dropped off by a parent by our auditorium. When you come in, you would normally hang out in our cafeteria or in our locker commons. You can't do that because of social distancing. We need you to go right to first period. If you have a study hall,
sorry, just to jump in. And right now, students don't even have lockers assigned to them, correct? So they don't even have a locker really to go to at this point. So there's no need to like stop in the locker commons and kind of do that. And lockers will be assigned when students return back from like in our hybrid setting, and it'll be like on a need basis. And that information will be communicated to later to students. But right now, there's not even like a need to go to a locker or anything like that. So students should be coming into the building and, like you just said, going to that first period class on the days where they're supposed to be physically in the building next week. So there's not this like huge jam up in certain spots throughout the building.
Correct. And thanks for jumping in there, Mr. Sluchko, on that. The other thing that I would say is please make sure you're wearing your mask. When you're wearing your mask, and if you can't see me on there, I need you to wear your mask where it's completely covering your nose and your mouth. This is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. You can't see. So please make sure that it's covering your nose and your mouth at all times. That's really important so that we can help with our safety program and things along that line.
And then remember, for students too, they need to have the mask on when they get to the bus stop. It needs to be on if they take the bus. It needs to be on the entire time they're on the bus, and then when they get off of the bus as well too. So hopefully, they have that mask on when they get to the bus stop, because in theory, the bus driver will not be letting you onto the bus if you don't have your mask on. Correct?
Correct.
So,
Correct.
so they'll come into the building and then the mask needs to be on the entire time they're here. There's no like designated mask off area. There's no mask break area at this point. So they need to have it on the entire time they're inside of the building. So, and if, you're listening to this on the audio, you didn't get to see the great visual that Mr. Fortier just demonstrated. So if you're looking, you want to see the video, go check it out on YouTube. But I think we all at this point hopefully know what the mask should look like. So that's kind of what the next week will look like. Students will come in the small little groups. But I think one of the things that, as teachers, we really want to drive the point home is last spring, the Google Meet sessions were not mandatory. They were like, they could come if they needed help, if they had questions, those kinds of things. But we were trying to make it abundantly clear to students that through the Zoom sessions or through what we're doing this year, attendance will be taken. If you're remote, you need to be there at the beginning of each class period. So can you just I know you talked a little bit about that, but just to make it very specific and concrete for students. So like when they take attendance the first week and even beyond, what is the expectation for students that need to be logged in at the beginning of each class period, and then kind of just explain to them what that should look like and then what the ramifications might be if they don't do that?
So really what you should be thinking about is that you're going to be coming to school, but you're not coming to school into the building. You're going to wake up, you should do your normal routine, have your breakfast, be ready to go at 7:23, logged into your first period. If for some reason that first period is a study hall, or that period is a late arrival, or if you have a something like that precludes you from first period, that would be the only reason that you should not be on your computer, logged into Zoom, logged into your Schoology account, and logged into the classroom. If you are late, you will be marked at late. If you don't show up, you'll be marked absent. That is really important for you to understand. And Mr. Stuchko really eloquently stated, you need to be in your classes. There's going to be a lot of information that's put out, especially the first week. There may be times where you have to log in. You have to listen to some instructions from teachers. You may be able to log out afterwards and do something that we call asynchronously, which means that you can do it on your own time. But most days, and I'm going to say like 99% of the days, you should be up, ready to go, and logged in at 7:23 in the morning to your first period class. On a Zoom call, checking in with your teacher, and making sure that you have everything you need for the day. There will be some time during your lunch period. So first period, you come in, you do what you got to do. Second period, you go to your next Zoom call, you do what you have to do. Third period is the time where you're going to have a third period class. You're going to have an advisory period. And that advisory period, there may be something for you to do. It may last you 10 minutes. It may last you 3 minutes. It may last you 40 minutes. It depends on what that day's activity looks like. Excuse me. After that time, then you'll have a lunch. Again, if you get the things done that you need to before that advisory period, the advisory period is very short, then you have more time for lunch. You can log out, you can do your lunch, you can have your lunch, then you can come back for your last fourth period class. Really, really important that you're logged in every single day, because if you're not, then we on our end, we have to ensure that you're there. We have to ensure that you're online. If that doesn't happen, then unfortunately we have to take steps on our end to say you're not coming to school. And that could involve a lot of different things. And I don't want to get into like the talking about all these consequences, but I need you to understand that there are serious consequences if you don't log in and you don't go to school.
So yeah, so that's one of the things, and I'm glad you kind of stated it pretty concretely there. And that'll be something that we, hopefully we don't have to go down that road, but it is definitely a change from last year that you definitely need to be where you need to be. So I think the first week we've kind of talked about what that will look like. So you'll only come into the building 1 out of the 4 days, depending on where your name falls into the alphabet. If you're not in the building physically, then you need to be logged into the Zoom calls, logged into the things that are going on in your class. And each day they're done at 11 o'clock. Then the week after Labor Day is when we're going to start our fully remote. Every class period will meet only outside the building unless there is a special circumstance. And then they're basically going to be doing like we did last year where everyone was remote. I know there's been a lot of questions about that third period because it's something new, and you talked about advisory there as well. So next week's third period is basically just going to be, the class period. There's not extra time for lunch, those kinds of things. So you don't have to worry about that for next week. But the week after, the second week, that's when we start the advisory lunch period, that kind of thing. So I know you already kind of spoke about it, but just to clear that for everybody, because I know like I've seen it on message boards and on online. So that third period, the second week, everyone that's in third period starts with what we're calling advisory. And it's going to be with your third period teacher for right now. And then you will have your third period class. And then at the end of that class, then it's lunch time for you at home. Then whatever time fourth period starts, I forget off the top of my head exactly what time it starts, then that's when you need to be logged back in for your fourth period class. Correct? Did I get that pretty much what it needs to be?
Correct. And from what I'm looking at, because our time frame when we come back into the building in a hybrid setting after the October 26th time frame, that starts around 12:15. I believe it's the same kind of time frame that we're using to come back to. So from 12:15 to 1:15 would be your last period class. You would still need to log in. You'd still need to get onto that last period class. Again, the only reason for you not to be logging back in is if it is a day that you are completely asynchronous. Your teacher has already explained that to you. You do not need to be, they've told you that you don't need to be logged in, or it is in a study hall. Let me kind of say one more thing. Those students that have a late arrival or a study hall in first period next week, you do need to report on that day, first period, 7:23. You will actually be, if you have what is called late arrival on your schedule, when you report in, you'll end up going to our main gym. So that's really important to know. But third period, Mr. Stuchko is absolutely right. You're gonna log in right at the start of third period, which I believe is around 9:43. And from 9:43 to 12:05, you'll have an advisory period, you'll have a 60-minute block of instruction, and then you'll have lunch. All of that will be worked out so that by 12:05, you're finished, you're ready to go, you're back at class.
So when we're remote, so the remote day ends at 1:15. So can you just explain to students what some of the expectations might be for students between that 1:15 to 2:30 time slot? Like, I know that teachers may reach out, you can reach out to teachers. So what can students because technically the day is not done at 1:15, like you can still be called to like be in small groups or other things like that. So what does that 1:15 to 2:30 slot look like?
So I would kind of like echo the similar things that you're saying, Mr. Stuchko, that students may be asked to join a group if they're having difficulties, they're having questions. Teachers are going to be available during that time, and they'll set some time up. They're obviously also going to be involved in other meetings that they may have, so they may have only limited time frames during that time, especially our ninth grade teachers. We have a team meeting at least once a week. So we're going to be talking about some of the barriers that you guys are experiencing and the teachers are experiencing. But that time frame there is really set aside to be able to be an extra support for each one of you. And those of you that are, let's say you're in an LCTI situation, you may still be at LCTI till 2:45 on whatever day that you're set to go there, and you're coming back on the bus and they're dropping you off at home from LCTI. So there's a lot of things that could go on. And if there is a requirement for you to be at something, the teacher says you're supposed to be there, then you're supposed to be there from any time between 12:15 and 1:15. So, excuse me, from 1:15 to 2:35. So please understand that that could happen. And then work with your teachers that if for some reason you can't make it at that specific point, that you set up a different time with them that's good for both of you. But to be honest, like if they say that you have to be there up until 2:25, you should be there.
So one of the things, and we're going to talk about this in some episodes coming up about what clubs and activities will look like. But do you know, like if a student wants to participate in a club or activity, those will all start at 2:35 and they'll all be virtual at the start of the school year?
That is absolutely correct. We do have a couple videos. I haven't had them uploaded to the activities web page, but if you're interested in getting involved in anything, they're all going to be online. So at this point, you should be looking at that list on the athletics web page. It's under clubs. You can look at it and you can work through there. Even sports, because there's a lot of like confusion about what is going on with sports.
Yep.
We have at least 3 sports that are starting right now, just because football or some of the other more contact or high-risk sports aren't actually competing at this point. We're still looking to try to get them it may be pushed back a month. It may be pushed back 2 months. We're trying to get it to a point where all of the sports are meeting whenever we can. We don't want a season to go away where students aren't able to participate in athletics. We don't want a season or an area to go away where students aren't able to participate in activities. So please make sure that you're as active as possible. But those, as Mr. Stuchka said, they're not going to start until 2:35, 2:45. That'll be on their website. That'll happen on a specific day. If you're interested, reach out to the sponsor that is listed in that activities webpage.
Yep. And then hopefully in the next coming weeks, I think one of my plans is to try to get a whole bunch of those people on to kind of give a little bit more detailed information about their clubs and activities and how they're going to be able to access all that different stuff. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll get a little bit more about that. So we've gotten a lot of great information, a lot of the nuts and bolts and all the different stuff, but I wanted to end, just to respect your time and kind of, I did want to ask one other question before I get to my final question. This was something I thought about yesterday. Was people have been so busy during the summer and wondering, we always wonder what people do and their jobs entailed. So can you just kind of explain to everybody, what has your summer been like in your role as the 9th grade principal? I know you've been constantly juggling and changing things, but I think people would appreciate just kind of an idea of what everyone's kind of had to do to get to this point. And I just kind of what has your summer been like? And what have you kind of learned from last year that you've been able to apply to what you've done this summer?
So it's definitely so much different from last year to this year, last summer to this summer. There has been a lot of things that have been coming in. So it's a lot of, unfortunately, hurry up and wait. We are waiting for, I would be waiting for something from district office, but the district office couldn't give me anything because they were waiting for something from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So while we're waiting for something from district office, we would be planning, okay, what is it going to look like for a hybrid? How are we going to get kids in? What is the schedule going to look like? Looking at, for me, myself, I was looking at various time frames, building different schedules, times for students and trying to figure out the math on how long does the period have to be? How long do we have for passing time? What's the safest thing for passing time? Do we have enough? Our custodians have been going constantly, our maintenance department have going constantly, making sure everything's clean, but then trying to figure out what is the maximum number of students that we can have in our classrooms to still be safe, socially distant, and to be able to hold as many students as possible so we could have as many students as possible in here in the building. Do we have to have 25% capacity? Can we do 50%? Can we do 75% and still be safe and socially distant? what we found and what I was called in a bunch of times to be able to do is to do extra measurements, to kind of run math, run like projections on what we can do. Mrs. Gamble, who is our academic affairs assistant principal, she's been tirelessly and still is trying to work out last nitty-gritty things about our schedule. That is the most thankless job that we have in our building. She has been tirelessly working from the time she wakes up until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, almost every day during the summer. She's working on that to try to get our schedule worked out, working with other people, because it's not just, hey, we're just going to put this all on a board and go. We have to do it through a computer system. And if the computer system spits back an error that we don't know how to fix, we have to then contact someone else from a company, and they only work for a specific amount of time. They might work 9 to 5. And then if it's 6 o'clock at night that she has to do it, she has to wait until the next day, try to work on something else. It has been constant change. We've been waiting on things from the state representatives in the state government, federal government. And again, everyone has been with the sole focus of how do we provide education and learning to students as safely as possible. So we're also looking at various like outbreaks and what is going on in health. So many different things to think about, so many different things to work through. I have to then create different schedules for staff members, because I'm not just responsible for the 9th grade academy, I'm also responsible for staff member schedules in our building. So that has to be then thought about. How can I make sure that there's coverage in the various areas that are high traffic to make sure that people are safe? So this is something where I've had to build. Usually I can build one schedule for those people and I'm done. I've had to build 4 schedules, one for when we're going to be the first week, one for when we're going to go hybrid and they're in the building with a very, very reduced number of students, our highest needs special ed population, and then another one for when we get back into a hybrid population, and another one just in case we can finally get a vaccine or something to be able to allow us to be all face-to-face back in the building at some point this year, just in case. So many different things to think about, different things to like schedule and work through, and then so many people to communicate and collaborate with.
And it's really interesting, all the stuff that you mentioned kind of leads into my last question. And I think it's, we're going to get our counselors on maybe in a couple of weeks when they're not inundated with course selection and changes and all that different stuff. But when I emailed you to kind of ask you to come on the show, the one thing I've now heard it 3 different times this week from different speakers or different things I've seen online is about the only thing that you can do in this situation is control the controllables and what you can actually do. And, all the stuff that you just mentioned, like 9th grade student that's walking in the door on Monday morning, they can't control any of the stuff that you just talked about. So as a 9th grade student, and kind of what our word or tip here as we kind of like leave for the episode here is like, what do you think that would mean for our 9th grade students for controlling the controllables in their own situation?
So I think the biggest thing that we all can do, whether we're a 9th grade student, whether we're a teacher, whether we're a senior that has been here for 3 years and is finally coming back for their senior year into an environment that is completely unknowable, is the one thing that we can always control is our temper and our patience. We all need to have that temper, patience, and grace. And to remember that there's more to what's going on than just our specific individual circumstance. What we've done as teachers, staff, administrators, district, state government, federal government, we have been trying to focus on how can we help those individual students to the best of our ability, and to provide a place that's safe and that we can provide an education. And this is where we've landed in the circumstances that we have with the resources that we have. And we're going to do our best to be able to communicate. So the biggest thing that I want the 9th graders to realize, if they don't know where they're going, don't get frustrated. Ask an adult, ask someone who looks like they may know where they're going. Don't be afraid to ask a question, because if you're afraid to ask the question, you're going to get lost, you're going to get frustrated, and then you're not going to be able to get where you need to be. It's just going to start a spiral. If you ask, people will help you. It's not going to be other things. So it's a big building, but we don't have 3,000 students in it. We have about 500 that's going to be moving around from place to place. That's going to be easier to move around. It's going to be easier to find places that you need, and just follow signs and ask questions.
And I think that's a great suggestion. So on Monday or any day next week, the kids are back in the building. If they need to find you in your best way of explaining to people where you would be in the building, where is your office located?
So my office is at the top of a little staircase. So when you come in the building, you're going to come into the auditorium or the locker commons area. Most students will come in there. When you come in, there's a little hallway. You take a right. You get to the top of the stairs there. Go down that hallway, top of the stairs. That's where my office is. The other thing that I want you to know is that no matter where you are when you come in, if you need someone, go to the nearest office. You don't have to come to my office to get help. You go to the nearest office or classroom that has an adult in it. They will help you. They will help direct you. That's your best bet.
And that's great advice, not just for our ninth grade students, but for any student that will be in the building next week. Just look around and ask for help. So, Mr. Fortier, thanks a lot for taking some time. You actually got a chance to eat lunch. You were telling me this is the first time you've actually gotten a chance to eat some lunch during the last couple of days here because of the different schedules that we're on. So hopefully you enjoyed it. And then next week we'll be at it and we'll see where it goes.
Yep. Thank you so much for Mr. Stuchko for what you do. This is a valuable podcast for information. If you know someone who's not listening to it, recommend it to them, because there's going to be so much information and help, and kind of like a way for students and ninth graders to be able to realize that they're not going through this alone.
And just so everyone's clear, he is not a paid endorser of the podcast, but we appreciate the kind words. So thanks a lot, Mr. Fortier, and the kids will see you next week, and I'll see you around the building here. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Stuchko.
Let's thank our sponsor for this show, the East Penn Education Foundation. This podcast has been made possible through a $1,000 grant awarded to teachers like me each year who are attempting to do unique projects in the area of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The foundation supports programs that put learning in motion by giving students the tools they need to think actively in a complex and changing world. You can follow them on Facebook at EPSD Education Foundation, on Twitter at EPSD EdFound, or on Instagram at EPSD Ed Foundation. Now on to the show.